Hello everyone, I'm Eternal Flame here, and I'm here today to talk about my honest opinion on Takaba versus Kenjaku, and give this video as my reason for why I think a lot of the fandom hates this fight, why I think some of the fandom's hate of this fight is misplaced, and my honest opinion on this fight as well. However, before we even get into this video, be sure to like and subscribe to anime content like this, and let's get straight into this. Now, this is my first time ever doing a video like this, but let's get straight into this. Now, let me just get first into this fight and what I think of this fight so far. I believe this fight is an actually decent fight. It's a great exploration of Kenjaku's character, of Takaba's character, an interesting interaction we would never get to see, and it answers a few questions like what Kenjaku has been doing this entire time, and where Takaba has gone off to, and how JJK is even going to use Takaba's curse technique, something that's been a fear and worry for a lot of the fandom due to the overpowered nature of Takaba's curse technique as a whole. It explores a lot of Takaba's past. It explores how Kenjaku's humor works, how Kenjaku's knowledge on comedy, and puts Kenjaku in a non-standard situation where none of Kenjaku's previous knowledge would be able to help him out, and even shows, even with this, Kenjaku is able to adapt and figure things out, how Kenjaku has been monitoring the battle, etc. It just shows so much, as well as a few characters from the Culling games, like a new character introduced to us, and Hazanoki, and how their fates have ended up, with Kenjaku finishing them off. Like, objectively speaking, this fight is pretty good. It answers a lot of questions, a lot of worries that the fandom has been having up to this point, like what Kenjaku has been doing, how JJK is going to handle such an overpowered curse technique like Takaba, and the current location that Kenjaku is in. So objectively speaking, this fight is really decent, and it even has some decent dialogue between it and some amazing memes. For example, the amazing face of Kenjaku, both of the one when he was making the funny face challenge and America Kenjaku. So in spite of all of that, a lot of the JJK fandom currently finds this fight mid, boring, bad, terrible. And why is that the case? Because in a vacuum, this fight is amazing. Well, not amazing, this fight is more than decent, because of it satisfying a lot of the necessary things in order to be a decent fight, on top of the fact that it even goes in depth with a character we do not know much about, and is making a basic character like Takaba, who was just made to be more of a meme character, much more complex and much more deeper, showing the issues with comedy. So why do so many people find this fight mid? And that is for one simple reason that I think is both the flaw of people who are hating on this fight, as well as the people who are trying to defend this fight. People are looking at this fight as an overall part of Jujutsu Kaisen, whether consciously or subconsciously. And the people who are trying to defend this fight are just defending it as a vacuum, because in a vacuum, this fight is pretty good, but the issue is Jujutsu Kaisen is not a vacuum. And we can't just look at Takaba versus Kenjaku as a vacuum. How we have to look at what happened in the past, and that is why I believe so many people really dislike this fight, and the reason why, because this fight has a really weird placement for where it is placed in, and that's something a lot of the fans agree on, and I think it's overall ruining the perception of this fight. Now, some of you guys might be wondering, what do I mean by ruining the perception of this fight, and this fight having a really weird placement? Well, first, I'm going to talk about the really weird placement of this fight, because this fight takes place right before one of the most hyped panels in all of Jujutsu Kaisen, the panel that has been so built up to this point that it's absolutely insane, which is Yuji and Higuruma hopping down in order to fight against Sukuna after the battle between Kashimo and Sukuna, something that a lot of people had believed to be Yuji and Sukuna's final encounter, a moment we have all been waiting for a long time, especially with the tease that Yuji has claw-like hands, hinting to the awakening of Yuji's curse technique, one of the biggest questions within all of Jujutsu Kaisen that a lot of people have been wanting answers on up to this point. We also had a week-long break after that, a week-long break to speculate and make theories on for what this could be, only to cut to this fight between Takaba versus Kenjaku, a fight that felt like it was out of nowhere, and more importantly cutting away from what was the most interesting and hyped up fight throughout all of Jujutsu Kaisen. Because some of you guys might say Gojo versus Sukuna was the most hyped up. No, Yuji versus Sukuna is even more hyped up than Gojo versus Sukuna. On top of that, we got Higuruma, someone who can pull up things from Sukuna's past, potentially show parts of Sukuna's past and crimes Sukuna committed, and finally get more answers on Sukuna's backstory, a backstory we know little to nothing about, like how Sukuna had become the strongest, something that Kashimo had made a question in our minds by directly asking Sukuna, and we just got hints teased about. Like, a lot of the questions Jujutsu Kaisen has been building up was just cut away to go towards this fight, such as Yuji versus Sukuna and their final battle, Sukuna's past, Yuji's curse technique, how Higuruma's domain would interact with someone like Sukuna, because Higuruma was one of the best counters towards Sukuna because of how his domain functions. all of that was taken away as we cut away towards this fight of Kenjaku versus Takaba, which as a result of that, it ended up sorely ruining the perception that a lot of people, myself included, would have on this fight between Takaba and Kenjaku, because we wanted something else. We wanted Sukuna versus everyone else, versus Yuji and Higuruma like we were supposed to get. However, it's ended up playing off as a joke in the narrative itself, because it's clear Gege is aware of this as well by Takaba's own line of when a side character steals the show from the main character, which I get it. It's a good joke and it's a funny joke because it actually kind of works as a joke, but the issue is it takes away from one of the most hyped up, built up moments in all of Jujutsu Kaisen, all for the sake of this fight and exploring a character that most people don't really care that much about. As a result of that, it gives the perception that this fight is incredibly mid. Just to give another comparison, imagine if Naruto was about to enter into his battle against Pain in Sage Mode. We got the most hyped up entrance, and Naruto just finished saving Tsunade, all of that. And then the next chapter cuts away to Ten versus Obito. That is basically the equivalent of this. Like, where even if the fight was somehow written incredibly well, written to be close, a great exploration of their character, we would still want the other fight more because of how built up it has been itself. And this is something unironically Kenjaku even explains to Takaba about why his jokes aren't funny. There's not enough build-up because this is just out of nowhere like Takaba's jokes. And in my opinion, it's not worth the joke to cut away from this fight. However, this also has a really bad side effect of most of the fandom itself looking at this fight in an incredibly negative light, purely because of the fact that this fight comes out of nowhere. And as a result of that, people look at this fight worse. They look at this fight like it's mid when it's really not mid. It's just in a vacuum, it's pretty good. But the problem is it's hard to look at this fight in a vacuum when we are about to get something incredibly hype and we just want that at that moment and we don't want to wait anymore. So basically, in my opinion, a lot of the hate towards this fight is misplaced because a lot of people are angry at the fact that we aren't getting Yuji and Higuruma versus Sukuna after getting a week-long break and just cutting away to this fight instead, where there's an actual easy way to have fixed it. Even though it would have taken away from Takaba's joke, I don't think anyone would have minded. I think people would have liked it a lot more, and you would get a lot less people dropping the series in comparison. I would bet if instead the chapter ended off on the Kashimo and Sukuna conversation and the next chapter went towards Kenjaku and their fight, most people wouldn't be anywhere near as angry. In fact, I think a lot of people would be even more intrigued, even more worried, and be even more in suspense about who is going to fight Sukuna next, while we also get to see as Kenjaku fights Takaba and get our full focus on that, going from one fight towards another, rather than cutting away from one of the most hyped up, built up moments that was going to satisfy free things about Jujutsu Kaisen that a lot of the fans wanted answers on, such as what Yuji's curse technique was going to be, if he even had a curse technique, about Yuji versus Sukuna, and finally a little bit about Sukuna's past through Higuruma's trial. All of that was about to be satisfied. That thing that's been built up for years by this point, especially in terms of Yuji versus Sukuna, only to be cut away to this random out of nowhere fight. Like, it literally feels like filler in a manga is the easiest way to put it, and that's where I think a lot of the anger towards this fight is coming from. It's not that this fight is bad, because I don't think a lot of people actually think this fight is bad, but they are just frustrated that they have to wait for as long as they do. And I am a little bit frustrated too. I really want Yuji versus Sukuna to happen, but I also can like this fight. I think a lot of the fandom is both being fair and unfair towards this fight. I think it is fair to dislike this fight because it gets in the way of a fight you actually want to happen. However, I don't think it's fair to judge this fight as mid or bad because you want another fight to happen. Now, if you do actually think this fight is mid, I can understand that. However, I don't think a lot of the fandom actually thinks this fight is mid. It's just that they are too frustrated with having to wait in order to actually give this fight a fair judgment. However, there is just such a genuinely easy way to fix this entire issue, which is literally just have this fight take place after the Kashimo fight and skip out the entire Yuji panel where Yuji and Higuruma hop down into the fields, and instead just go straight in towards this fight and then end this fight off with the cut back towards Yuji and Higuruma hopping down into the field against Sukuna. That would have been the best way, and I think it would have caused a lot less fandom outrage towards this fight. However, that's just my opinion on this fight, why I dislike this fight, and why I think a lot of people dislike this fight. Maybe I'm completely wrong, maybe I didn't hit it at all on the hammer, or maybe I hit it on the nail completely. Who knows? But I want to see what you guys' thoughts are in the comment section below on this fight, and if you guys think my judgment of this fight is wrong, or if you guys think I'm right. Anyways, I'm gonna see y'all later. Peace out. Have a good day. See y'all later. If you guys want to see more videos like this one in particular, then yeah, give this video enough support, and I probably will give more of my honest opinions on fights like this. Anyways, see y'all later. Peace.